WWE reported its first quarter earnings on Thursday with $263 million in revenue, over $43 million in profits. Well more than what analysts were expecting, largely from the initial lump sum payment they got from Peacock for the network. Vince McMahon said very little, which seems to be the norm on these things now. He took no questions. But here is what he did have to say. He said, "We're coming out of COVID. At first, we were in survival mode, but we found life. Once we felt secure, we then saw this as an opportunity to rethink the way we do business and open what I call the WWE treasure chest. The only way you're going to do that is with the best management team in WWE history. We have that team, a team that is innovative and drives revenue and has reorganized our company in a far more efficient way to take advantage of new revenue streams, new online platforms, new consumer products, content creation, and new opportunities to expand our media rights portfolio on a global basis. I'm always excited about our business. I don't think I have ever been as excited as I am now." They also talked about returning to live touring sometime in the second half of the year. I already told you the belief is they want live fans for SummerSlam. That is the goal. And I presume live events would then follow. The person who handled the majority of the call and the Q&A was their new president, Nick Khan. You've been hearing his name quite a bit, I'm sure. He's been making a lot of moves lately, including the Adnan Virk move on Raw, and wielding a lot of influence within the company. Vince McMahon has put a lot of faith and trust into this man. You know, and the more I hear about Nick Khan and all the moves he's making, this guy's going to be the one to sell this company to Comcast, which owns NBC Universal. I am, with each passing week, I am more and more convinced of this, that he is going to be the man. Maybe that's why he was brought in. Maybe that's part of the reason why he was brought in, to kind of clean things up, organize things in a better way, and get this company prepped and ready in the next, I don't know, five years or so to be sold. I am more and more convinced of this with every passing week when I hear about the moves that this man is making and the influence that he apparently has. And there were a lot of front office departures this week to that point, especially on the talent relations end. One of the names that surprised me was Joe Villa. Not that I knew him. I knew of him. I interacted with him a handful of times over the years, and he had been with the company over 20 years. He started out in fan services. He moved up to a top spot in their publicity and PR department. John Cohn, who serves as a referee, he was also senior manager in talent relations. He was terminated in that managerial role. He was said to still be a referee. PW Insider later reported that this termination was rescinded already. His termination as a senior manager was already rescinded, and he is back in that role once again, working under John Laurinaitis, who recently returned to the role as head of talent relations. One person who is no longer working in talent relations, in fact, he is no longer working for WWE at all, is Mark Carrano of Total Divas fame. Mark Carrano. Wrestling Inc. was first to break the news of his departure, which came after Mickie James, who was one of the 10 talents fired by WWE a week earlier, received a special delivery at her home from WWE with some of her belongings, delivered in a garbage bag. This has become Garbage Gate. Big controversy this week. Mickie posted a photo on social media Thursday of said garbage bag with the caption, "Dear at Vince McMahon." So she tagged the boss. "I'm not sure if you're aware, I did receive my WWE care package today. Thank you. Hashtag always blessed and grateful. Hashtag women's wrestling matters." There were said to be other female performers who also had their belongings returned to them in a trash bag, but Mickie is the one who went public with it. One female talent told The Observer, "We have drawers that travel as well as bringing stuff from home to the shows. So we leave little things we may need from week to week, our gear, our makeup, our shoes. We take our gear bag home, but a lot of people have heavy gear that is easier to leave at the venue." And then I presume the company just transports it for them place to place. Gail Kim, Maria Kanellis, and Jillian Hall all chimed in. They said the same thing happened to them. And, in the case of someone like Jillian or Gail Kim, they haven't been with the company probably for a decade or more. So if this was happening to them, that was years ago. That probably predates Carrano's role, I'm sure, in talent relations. I think Carrano may have been with the company long before that, but not in a talent relations role. So they needed a scapegoat. Carrano was that scapegoat. I see tweets and all kinds of things online implicating Carrano. Oh, he's a creepy guy. There's some woman on social media throwing stories around about him. I think it's the same woman who used to be. You know what? I'm not even going to get into all that because who knows what's real and what's not. Anybody can go on Twitter and throw around accusations. I don't know Carrano personally. I know of what I saw of him on Total Divas the 2 or 3 times I watched that show at the beginning. And he didn't come across as, an overly likable guy. But I don't know much about him on a personal level. In this case, whether or not he was doing all of those things is irrelevant. They needed a scapegoat, and Carrano was that scapegoat. I mean, it's all about appearances. You're firing these people. At least put their stuff in something other than a goddamn hefty bag. Nobody thought of the symbolism of that. Within hours of Mickie posting that photo, WWE took action, with Triple H and John Laurinaitis posting virtually identical tweets, saying, upon learning of the disrespectful treatment of some of our recently released talent, on behalf of the company, we took immediate action. The person responsible for this inconsiderate action has been fired and is no longer with WWE. That person being Carrano. Stephanie McMahon tweeted, I am embarrassed that you or anyone else would be treated this way. I apologize personally and on behalf of WWE. The person responsible is no longer with our company. Mickie later responded to Stephanie and said, thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate that, as I am equally embarrassed. I know this wasn't a malicious act. However, it did feel very symbolic to how I was presented in the last 3 years. Like I said, it's the symbolism of it. I doubt that Triple H or Stephanie or Vince or any of the top people even knew it was happening. You'd think Vince McMahon and Triple H are brought into the decision-making on what kind of fucking bag to put people's belongings in. They don't know this shit's going on. Now, you could say they should know. They should have been aware. But those are decisions that are below their pay grade. So I'm sure they didn't know it was happening. They've got more important things to occupy their time with. But these are the sorts of things, in the age of social media that will come back to bite you on the ass. My take on the whole thing? They were probably getting rid of Carrano anyway. This just gave them a good excuse to give him the boot. I mean, think about it. The minute they reinstalled John Laurinaitis in a talent relations role, he basically took Carrano's spot. He took his job. At that point, I wasn't even sure they were going to keep Carrano around anyway. They no longer had any use for him. So I think it's very likely with that whole wave of departures last week, he would have been a goner anyway. He would have been among the names that were probably going to be let go. But this just gave them this perfect reason, very publicly, to give him the boot. But now we can move on from Garbagegate because there are far more important things to talk about. Case in point, and this is a really sad story. Steve Mongo McMichael, who played a key role in the Chicago Bears winning their one and only Super Bowl in the 1985 season. Later on, he had a stint in WCW as a member of the Four Horsemen. He went public this week to announce that he has been diagnosed with ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, named after the famous New York Yankee who had his baseball career, really his life, cut short by the illness. The Ice Bucket Challenge, everybody remembers that? The Ice Bucket Challenge a few years ago that went viral, that was intended to bring about a greater awareness of ALS. If you read up on it, if you know anything about it, if you know anyone who has had ALS, it is a sinister illness. I mean, it robs you of your ability to eat, to speak, to move, to breathe until you just die. It's about as horrible as any illness that is out there. I mean, not that anybody wants any kind of illness. I mean, there's a lot of really terrible, diseases out there and cancers and all kinds of shit. But I would say on the list or on the bingo card of horrible illnesses, this has got to be up there in the top 2 that I certainly would never want to have. And there's no cure for it. There's no known cure. They're working on certain medications and things that can slow the progression. In the case of McMichael, this is happening very, very quickly. His body is failing on him at a rapid rate. Just a horrifying diagnosis. And he is making the announcement now to let everybody know that he is retiring from public life. We will not be seeing him make any more public appearances. He can't sign autographs anymore anyway because he has no use of his hands. And I guess he had a radio spot talking about, Bears football in Chicago, and there was a band that he played with. And so he just wanted to let people know so they're not wondering, hey, what happened to Mongo? Where's he at? He figured, let's just go public. We'll bring some awareness to this, but I want people to know why they're not going to see me anymore. He's using a specialized wheelchair now to get around, although he's not yet completely reliant on it, but he will be very soon. It's very expensive, though. So the family has set up a GoFundMe while they wait on money that they should be getting from the NFL. The NFL has a plan that is set up to provide financial assistance to retired players for diseases just like this: ALS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. A lot of retired football players, unfortunately, end up being diagnosed with conditions like this. But once they're approved, my understanding is that they should end up with over $140,000. The problem is they have no idea when they'll be approved. It could be a while before they get their hands on that money. And in the meantime, the medical bills are piling up. You hear about stories like this in this country all the time. You could easily be bankrupted just by medical bills. So they're running through their savings. They have to find a new home that is handicap accessible. I guess they rent their current home, so they can't make any renovations to it because they don't own it. So they're looking to move. It's a whole situation. He was diagnosed officially in February. He had been having issues, I guess, for months before. He had tingling in his arms and such, but he just figured it stemmed from the wear and tear of playing football and his wrestling career. But he's only been given a few years to live. He's got a 13-year-old daughter at home. It's just, God, it's... And he's not that old. He's in his early 60s, I believe, but he's got a 13-year-old kid at home. I mean, it's tough, but he's keeping a good attitude about it. His wife, Misty, has been a godsend for him, taking care of him as best she can. Some people may forget Mongo was in WWE before he was ever in WCW. He didn't wrestle. Everybody knows about WrestleMania 11, LT and Bam Bam in the main event, but Mongo was one of the NFL All-Stars in Lawrence Taylor's corner for that match. But even before that, in the build-up, he had done commentary for a King Kong Bundy match on an episode of Monday Night Raw. And later that same year, when WCW Monday Nitro debuted on TNT from the Mall of America, he was part of the announce team, along with Eric Bischoff and Bobby Heenan. Later on, he got into the ring. It was Mongo and Kevin Green. Kevin Green just passed away in December. I think he was even younger than Mongo. The two of them took on Ric Flair and Arn Anderson, and Mongo turned on Kevin Green and joined the Horsemen. And he was married to Deborah at the time, who was later married to Steve Austin. But he had a decent run there. He wasn't the best wrestler, but he looked the part. He was very charismatic. I know there's an entire Twitter account dedicated to Mongo moments and botches. He was very entertaining, I'll say that much. Not too many people can say they have an entire Twitter account, dedicated to them and their moments, however bad some of them may have been. But when asked by the Chicago Tribune whether or not he would do it all over again, if he could, knowing that his football career could have played a role, or even his wrestling career, even if that meant ending up with ALS, he said, hell yes, I would do it all over again, because it is not about the destination, it's about the journey in getting there. But I wish him well. There isn't really much else to say. You kind of know what the outcome is going to be. It's not going to be good. But I wish him well.